In today's module, we're going to discuss negotiation with suppliers, and we'll cover the 5 stages of negotiation, how you can improve and develop your own personal negotiation skills to influence the outcome in your negotiations, how to set and develop your own negotiation strategy before you enter any negotiations, and of course, conducting the actual negotiations. The word negotiation is defined as a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. And negotiating the right deal with your suppliers doesn't necessarily mean getting what you want at the cheapest possible price. There's a range of key considerations you'll need to bear in mind when you're setting yourself objectives for purchase negotiations. These may include price, value for money, payment terms, after-sales service, lifetime guarantees, and much more. Most business owners would view a good deal in negotiation as one that meets all of their requirements, and where both sides conclude the agreement feeling comfortable and happy. Today we're going to talk about the 5 stages of the negotiation process. The first step is preparation, and this is the gathering of all the information that may be relevant or useful in helping you with the actual negotiation. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut to the preparation. You'll need to spend time researching information, analysing the data for your business, deciding what your leverage points may be, identifying the interest for the other parties. You'll have to consider the relationship you want to build as well. There's no big benefit to your business in winning a short battle of negotiation, but losing the bigger picture opportunities. Especially if you're dealing with a long-term supplier, at some point you'll have more power and leverage over that supplier, and at some point they'll have more power and leverage over you. In these cases, it's better to think of the marathon and not the sprint. When you're doing your preparation, you need to explore all positions and test your different goals, identify your most desired outcomes, consider what you deem to be the least acceptable options, and explore all the best alternatives and concessions. Effectively, you want to mind map every option that you can think of before you start the actual negotiation. This allows you to consider your opinion on what's acceptable to you before you start negotiations. You don't want to be caught off guard in the actual meeting and accept something without fully understanding what the deal means. Sometimes it even helps you clarify your own position on things. An example from real life, when I was signing off budgets for buying for a large international fashion PLC, before people went to do the actual buying and negotiation on price, I would first try and understand my business needs. What inventory do I have now? What will I need to meet my sales? What does that mean for my cash reserves? What are my problems related to that brand and specifically with inventory? And once I had created what I deemed to be my own ideal buying budgets, I then needed to consider what it meant for that supplier. If I had huge increases in my buying in terms of value or quantity, it's likely to be a good place for me to negotiate on discounts and price with the supplier. If my purchases are less than previous seasons or years, they're likely to be unhappy with me and will have their own buying budgets for growth to meet. Knowing where you stand and also seeing the position of your supplier will help you be better at negotiation. You'll understand what you're walking into. You can think of solutions and alternatives from all angles. Going in armed with information will always help strengthen your negotiation position. At the end of the day, ultimately with negotiation with suppliers, you are trying to find common ground and reach an actual agreement. The next phase is to start exchanging the information with your supplier. And this is basically where you both share information and start to test the waters and explore options that will lead to the ultimate bargaining and coming to an agreement. If the initial reactions are positive, you know you can move forward. And if the initial reactions are negative, you can go back to the drawing board and have a look at your plans. Having good rapport and solid relationships helps this stage and helps move into the bargaining phase. And the bargaining phase is where all the give and take happens. This is where all of the work completed in your preparation comes to hand. It helps you go back and forth with the supplier and manage and make your concessions that you're happy with in bargaining. And eventually both parties come to an agreement. And as I mentioned at the start, good negotiation means both parties walk away feeling comfortable and happy with the agreement. People with strong interpersonal skills and fine-tuned communication skills are particularly skilled at negotiation. They're able to communicate effectively, read the emotions and behaviours that are happening through the bargaining phase, and find the value to be able to come to a deal with the other party. Once you've completed all the bargaining and an agreement has been made, the next stage is to conclude. This is the time where you want to put down in writing what you've actually agreed to and produce a document that summarises what's been agreed. At this stage, you'll also want to consider how you can put measurement tools in place to assess progress on what's actually been agreed. And the last stage is stage 5, which is the implementation of the agreement, execution. And this is where you follow through on what you've actually agreed with the other side. And of course, you measure if they've followed through on what they've agreed. One of the best ways to improve your negotiation with suppliers is to develop your own personal negotiation skills. No matter how experienced you are and how many years under the belt you have, everybody has the ability to develop their skills further. People who have good interpersonal skills are usually very effective negotiators. And interpersonal skills are the skills that we use every day when we communicate and interact with other people, both individually and on a group level. And interpersonal skills cover a wide range of skills, from problem solving, decision making, assertiveness, relationship management, showing empathy, listening skills, conflict management. So today we're going to focus on some of the key skills that will be specific to helping you improve your negotiation skills. So we're going to start with listening, and listening is the most fundamental component of interpersonal communication skills. Listening is not something that just happens, that's hearing. Listening is an active process in which a conscious decision is made to listen and to understand the message the speaker is trying to give to you. And active listening is a skill that can be acquired, and you can develop it with practice. When you're practicing active listening, it means you're fully concentrating on what's being said rather than just passively hearing the message from the speaker. And as well as giving your actual attention to the speaker, you need to be seen to be actually actively listening. People like to be heard, and they like to feel that what they're saying is valued and important. And there are many ways that you can provide this non-verbal feedback while the person is speaking. You can maintain eye contact, nod your head, smile, or simply agree with what they're saying by saying yes. By providing this feedback to the person speaking, it will help them feel more at ease and help them communicate more effectively, openly and honestly with you. It will also have the added advantage of enabling you to understand their point of view, what their goals and objectives are, and this will be helpful in the negotiation process because you need to come to an agreement at some point. So seeing their point of view, understanding how you can facilitate that where it's possible, where it's not possible, and what your position is and what they're actually saying. Another important skill that you can develop for your negotiation skills is rapport building. In business, rapport building is a prime factor. Rapport manifests with good communication, which helps better negotiation. Rapport is a connection or a relationship with somebody, and building rapport is the process of developing that connection with somebody. Sometimes this happens naturally. We've all had experiences where we hit it off with somebody without having to try. However, in business, most times you need to work at rapport building, talking to people and trying to find common ground. And there's many ways that you can go about this. I'll give you an example. When I was 24 and in my first management position, I used to work in an office. And every Monday morning, I would spend the first 30 minutes of the week walking around the office, saying hello to people, asking about their weekend, and talking about issues that we had previously discussed or were important to them, be it a football game, etc. I would pass by HR, payroll, finance, logistics, projects departments, and equal opportunity chit-chat. Some of my colleagues used to mock me, and all in good fun, of course, and deem it just chatty and a waste of time. But even then, in my first management role outside of stores, I understood the importance of rapport building and relationships. And when I had issues that needed resolving within my business, be it my team paid incorrectly, supplier payments held up, warehouse backlogs, whatever the issue, I had relationships with people and people wanted to help me resolve issues. I went to the top of the list to get something resolved above somebody who sent an email and they didn't have a relationship with. Even today in high-level meetings, I will always spend time before the meeting starting to build rapport, break the ice, find common ground, talk about safe subjects, the weather, travel, holiday seasons, whatever's appropriate. What I'm trying to do is build rapport, understand who I'm dealing with, identify what role each person has when I'm going into this meeting, what they may be negotiating, what angle they'll be coming from, what their specific needs might be. This enables me to direct my negotiation towards the right person at the right time. Building rapport makes tough conversations a lot easier as they seem a lot less hostile when some rapport has been built and there's a connection there already. Another skill that's worth practicing and developing to improve your negotiation skills is being assertive. And being assertive is not the same as being aggressive. Assertiveness is expressing your thoughts, your beliefs, your opinions in an honest and transparent way, and an appropriate way for the situation. Assertiveness is considered a balanced response, being neither passive nor aggressive. And there are 3 key elements of communication that help with assertiveness. The first is confidence, believing that you have the ability to handle the situation and communicate effectively. The second is being clear. Ensure that the message you want to deliver is clear and easy to understand. And lastly, be controlled. Ensure that you deliver the information in a calm and controlled manner. Don't ever get angry. It will confuse the message, and your assertiveness will be lost to aggression. Another skill you should practice to enhance your negotiation skills is the decision-making process. Usually decision-making involves choosing between a number of possible paths. Decisions can be made through either an intuitive process or a more reasoned process, or a combination of the two. Intuition is using your gut about a possible course of action. And although a lot of people talk about it as if it was a magical sense, intuition is actually just a combination of your past experience and your personal values. In business, it's always better to use a more reasoned process as the primary way to make your decisions. And reasoning is using the facts and figures in front of you to help make your decisions. To ensure that you're taking the right decision within your negotiation process, you should have a clear decision-making process, and this will help build your confidence in believing the path that you're taking is the right decision for you. And this will help you in your negotiation, as you will know what will work and will not work for you, and you'll know where to draw the line and where you're willing to make your compromises or concessions. Here's an example of a decision-making process. You should consider each course of action. You should understand the impact, the cost, the outcome of each possible action. You should understand the stakeholders and the different interests. You should evaluate all of your options, and then you should choose the option and the way forward that is best for your business. A really important skill is effective speaking, and it almost renders everything else null and void if you don't get this skill right. And effective speaking involves 3 main areas: choosing the words you use, how you actually say them, and how you reinforce them with other non-verbal communication. All of these have the effect of how your message is received and understood by your audience. It's always worth considering your choice of words carefully. And of course, you'll probably need to use different words in different situations, even when you're discussing the same subject. For example, what you would say to a close family member or colleague will be very different for how you present a situation at a negotiation meeting. How you speak and deliver the words are always reinforced by your tone of voice, your body language, and your facial expressions. It's impossible to isolate verbal communication from non-verbal communication. And lastly, you should work on how you can manage your emotions. Negotiations can sometimes involve conflict and difficult subjects. Also, at times, there can be a lot of stake, and this can heighten emotions. And it's natural to feel emotive in certain situations. But you need to learn to control your emotions in negotiations. Part of the preparation will help you not be caught off guard with any part of the negotiations, because you should have full access to all information, and this will help you keep your emotions in check. It means that you have time to consider and reflect upon difficult or conflicting news. Digesting a little allows you to control your emotions in the actual negotiation. Negotiation is a part of life, both in your professional life and your personal life, and developing the skills that you have is always a worthwhile exercise. Now we'll talk about how you will approach the actual negotiation process and move through the stages of negotiation. What will your negotiation strategy be? We talked earlier about the preparation, gathering the data, understanding all of the interests and the leverage points, considering the relationship that you want to have long term, and all of the different angles and potential outcomes. And by now you will have had time to make some decisions. Firstly, what are your actual priorities? Be it price, product specifications, specific delivery schedules, specific payment terms to help manage your cash flow. Confirm what your priorities are. Next, you'll need to consider what are your non-negotiables. What areas can you not afford to move on? And have a list of areas that you are willing to make compromises on. Throughout your preparation, you'll also be able to understand what are your leverage points and what are the leverage points on the other side. Next, you'll need to consider how you will approach the negotiation. You'll want to organise the strengths of your arguments and the points, and you'll want to consider how to balance out weaker arguments. It would also be worth considering how you can help the supplier. Often everybody is so busy considering what the supplier can do from them, they never take time to consider how they could help the supplier. Relationships are two ways, as we've said before. And if you can give a supplier a win and help them with one of their goals, especially if it doesn't cost you anything, will give you leverage in other areas and likely make them want to give you a win on another point of negotiation, and perhaps this is more valuable to you. An example of this could be understanding their systems and the pressure points within their own business. You could offer to reduce admin by ordering monthly instead of weekly, or conversely, you could change your ordering process to weekly instead of monthly to improve the cash flow and the pressure on the warehousing system. These are just examples, but understanding how you could help your supplier, especially if it doesn't cost you a lot of money, is not only a relationship building tactic, but it's a great way to leverage other value for your business. And lastly, you should consider who will do the actual negotiation. You need to ensure that you match the right level team member with the actual supplier member negotiating. For example, you don't send a store manager to negotiate with the CEO. Sometimes the negotiation process requires a little bit of a dance, almost part negotiation and part exchange of information. More junior members of the teams are sent to negotiate and thrash out the details. And at the end, the senior management or business owners come in to close the detail. They're much more equipped to be able to cut through the roadblocks. This process is used to test the strength of the negotiators and the positions on certain things. Sometimes people who are less skilled at negotiation will cave, and the other side has had a quicker victory. So before you attend any negotiations, it's always worth understanding who's going to be in attendance of these negotiations. At the end of the day, the point of negotiation is to have a discussion and to reach an agreement. But it's important to understand what does good look like for you and to have a clear agenda before you walk into any negotiation. Setting your priorities, setting your parameters, and being clear about what you want to actually achieve. It's a great idea to put your strategy in writing before you begin actual negotiations. A written document will help you remember your position when you're in the actual negotiation. Sometimes it's easy to get swayed in the back and forth of conversation or by the other person's argument or perspective. Having your strategy in writing with you will be a helpful tool to help you stay on track and remember where you are. Remember where you want to draw the line and if you need to walk away from the deal. There'll be reasons that you've set yourself these parameters, be it financial, logistical, time constraints, or time inefficiencies, and it's important you stay on track to be true to what you actually need from a negotiation. And while, of course, there will be concessions made in any negotiation, having a document in writing will help you stay on point to your non-negotiables and sticking to the areas that you're happy to make concessions in, and ultimately reach a deal that you're happy with. We're now going to talk about how you conduct the actual negotiation, and I'm going to break it down into 4 key steps. The first step is engagement. This is where you start with the relationship and rapport building some trust with the individuals that will be completing the negotiation. You may or may not already have a history with the individuals, but engaging in some small talk breaks the ice and sets a good tone for the start of a negotiation. You then need to map out the issues and the context for the negotiation, get all of the points on the table, lay out what you want to discuss, and ask the supplier to lay out what they want to discuss. Make sure everybody is in agreement about what's being covered today. Once you have agreement in those areas, you should move on to reviewing the history of the business and the current position, the value of the current contract, growth periods, existing discount parameters, payment terms, and any past issues that have come up that have impacted your business performance, either on the supplier side or your side. Most suppliers will have a number of customers, and sometimes the size and value of a contract can be forgotten in the amount of detail. Highlighting that you're a £100,000 contract or £250,000 contract or £1 million contract, whatever it may be, to the supplier at the start of the conversation and negotiation, reiterate your position and the value that you have to them. Once you've completed the engagement phase, you move on to the suggestion phase. And the suggestion phase is where you are testing the waters on the various points and subjects. You want to understand where you think they will push back and where they're open to agreement. And it's worth spending time flushing through all that you have to discuss to have a more rounded picture of what the overall negotiation package will look like before proceeding to the bargaining phase. This will allow you to make concessions where you want to, but also know that you need to push back in other areas. Common phrases you'll hear in the suggestion stage are, if you do X, we might be prepared to do Y. You're not committing to anything, you're testing the waters. And once you've completed the suggestion phase, you move on to the bargaining phase. And with the bargaining phase, it will depend on who has the most amount of power and leverage at any one time, and on each of the points. If you have enough bargaining power, you can insist on your terms and conditions. If this is not the case, you'll have to go through point by point and try and find individual agreement. The bargaining phase naturally just takes time. There's generally a lot of back and forth and people trying to protect their own position before agreement is reached. This is normal, and you're trying to give the impression that you are approaching negotiations positively without revealing your position. You don't want to give away your position and indicate the things that you're willing to make compromises on too early in the negotiation. You want to protect your position as much as possible and walk away with as much for your business as you can. Sometimes in negotiation, people will use tactics to create pressure points on individuals. Try not to be influenced by them. If you feel you need to take a break to be able to consider some points, take one. Don't allow anyone to force you along. I also find it helpful that if you do agree to a point, repeat it and clarify it and then write it down. I've been in situations where you get to the end of a negotiation, you think you've agreed on certain points, which then influence your decision making on other points, to find out that you're not in agreement after all. People can claim miscommunication or misunderstanding. So I find it helpful to clarify, write it down, and make sure it's locked down in the agreement. In different trade industries, sometimes suppliers can set artificially high prices that are then permanently discounted. If this scenario applies to your specific business, ensure that any concessions a supplier makes are real. Negotiate the discounts that go beyond the standard level. In many cases, the bargaining phase can take time, and despite this, the investment of time is worth it. The end goal is to come to an agreement that benefits your business. Make sure you stick to your own parameters. Once you've concluded the bargaining phase, you can move on to the agreement and conclusion phase. In this phase, you'll ensure that all points you've agreed to are summarised and in writing. A contract will follow, which we'll discuss in the next phase. At the conclusion of the actual meeting, you want to set the scene for the next phase of negotiation, giving both parties something to look forward to through growth of the relationship and actual turnover of business. Is always a good conclusion. It sets the tone and motivation for the future.